the Inquisition, a deadly machine, the dark side of the papacy. To fully comprehend this phenomenon and the apparatus of the Inquisition, I strongly believe that we need to consider the following statement. The Inquisition was the means by which the Roman Church imposed its theological apparatus through force. Now, to any civilized society, the very concept of imposition should be considered as the sworn enemy to elementary justice. And yet, the Inquisition was carried out. Now, throughout history, there have been many atrocities, monstrosities that remain as a heritage of our species. Despicable things that we must not forget, that we need to learn from. One of which is, for example, the Holocaust, which was carried out by Nazi Germany. Of course, it was an unspeakable atrocity. 6 million Jews lost their lives, were killed, obliterated, and probably 12 to 15 millions others were killed. Why? Because of the madness and ambitions, sick ambitions of one man, Hitler. And yet we can consider this as an incident of a man who took power. And yet my question is, how many popes did we have throughout history, throughout Inquisition, for all the time that this phenomenon occurred? Inquisition lasted for 605 years. And we had more than 60 popes. Were they all mad? Were they all completely despicably crazy? Did any of the popes who even remotely thought that perhaps it was the case to reconsider? They did not. And not only they did not, but they actually cemented, increasing the methodic organization. But when did it all begin? Well, already towards the end of the 12th century, the Church had started to find ways, method, to condemn and find heretics, so-called heretics. However, it is with Innocent III that it all began to raise in the scale, with a war fought against the Cathars. Now, I think that the main problem with this war, with this crusade, is the fact that it's considered to be ultimately unsuccessful, because the war was supposed to destroy completely this civilization, the Cathars. At the end of the crusade, although many thousands of Cathars had been killed, there were still some of them alive, and that's why the crusade is not considered to be successful. But still, towards the end of the 14th century, all Cathars had been rooted out. But ultimately, I believe, as a passionate individual for history, that unfortunately, the crusade started by Innocent III, Pope Innocent III, was ultimately successful. We can consider it victorious every time that we go out there, talk to someone, anyone, and ask the question, do you know who the Cathars were? Do you know what happened to them? Every time people will say no, they will have won. They will have won. Because this is what they wanted. Utter eradication from history, from our memories. How can we combat this? We can fight this. We can fight this evil through historical erudition, remembering and spreading the words. For they deserve it. For they, the innocent, whose blood was spilled, cry from the earth, from the soil. They want to be remembered. Innocent III had perceived, and the Roman Catholic Church had perceived the Cathars, this population which lived in the southern part of France, as a menace, as a threat. Why? Because they were mostly people who had different beliefs and considered the Catholic Church as a church that was not teaching the truth. Now, what was his reaction? His reaction was to arm a whole army of crusaders, promising them lands, asking them to completely destroy this population. Total, utter annihilation. And to quote the words of the Pope, he promised spiritual rewards for the knights who would have carried out this murder. Indulgences for the remission of sins. Can such a memory be tolerated? I say nay. Do these people deserve to be remembered? I say yea. The Inquisition went further on with Pope Lucius III, who instituted the Episcopal Inquisition. The Episcopal Inquisition was a way to get rid or eradicate heretics who were, for example, preaching different doctrines to that of Mother Church. This was given to the hands of the bishops, who were then supposed, after finding these people, to give them and turn them over to local authorities for punishment. That is when the burning at the stake began. Pope Innocent IV was the one to further configure the procedure, adding brutal torture. Now, in this video I cannot, unfortunately, talk specifically about the kinds of means of torture because it would take too much time. I will create a dedicated video to the concept of torture in the Middle Ages. But it was through a papal bull that these tortures started to be utilized. Let us not forget this. It was through a papal bull. Pope Gregory IX further cemented the power of Inquisition. He took this responsibility, this duty, from the bishops and gave it to two monastic orders, the Order of the Franciscans and the Order of the Dominicans. I will repeat this. The Pope took it from the bishops and gave this responsibility, the responsibility of these trials, of condemning people, of burning people, of torturing people, to the orders of the Franciscans and the Dominicans. This is history. Did you know what happened exactly to the Cathars during these crusades? Thousands of them were killed. 10,000, 20,000. There were over 4 million Cathars spread in over 10,000 cities. None of them remain. And we read, neither age nor sex was spared. Church walls interposed no protection, and 7,000 were put to death in St. Magdalen's Church alone. Now I would like you to please, because these are words, this is a piece of paper, try to use your imagination. Look at this picture. I will read it again. Neither age nor sex was spared. Church walls interposed no protection, and 7,000 were put to death in St. Magdalen's Church alone. This vicious crusade lasted 20 years. 20 years of terror, of horror. But they were not satisfied with burning people. They started burning dead bodies. The dead bodies of those who were believed to have died in heresy. These bodies would be exhumed and burnt. We then moved to the second stage of the Inquisition, the Spanish Inquisition, including witch hunts, very famous, over 70 to 80% of which were women and others were men. Sorcerers, I suppose. But the problem is that continuing, who could be considered as an heretic, as a heretic? Anyone. You only needed an accusation. You didn't even need witnesses, which was contrary to Roman rights. So people started to use this, for example, simply to show that they were not heretics. They would accuse someone else, an innocent person. Who knows how many innocent people have been killed by these practices, evil, wicked practices. People would start accusing and using this, for example, to get rid of other people that they did not like. And this was considered to be divine justice. Not justice, divine justice. It was considered to be condign punishment. So what were the duties, the tasks of an inquisitor? We had hearings, then confiscation of properties, money. So sometimes even the wealthy would be targeted, not only poor people, anyone would be targeted by Inquisition. Then we had one of the duties of an inquisitor was to oversee torture. So again, the so-called monastic orders were overseeing torture and then burning at the stake. They used torture so that people would confess, and after having confessed, they would be killed. Inquisitors had women, for example, stripped naked. They would shave them completely because they believed in the Middle Ages that these wishes would hide demonic tools in their intimate parts. Pope Innocent III says, "O most mighty soldiers of Christ, most brave warriors, ye oppose the agents of Antichrist, and ye fight against the servants of the old serpent. Fight for God." This video was just an overall understanding, an overall view of the Inquisition. There is much more to say, and I will make other videos about this, for example, the Spanish Inquisition. But I wish to extend a pledge to all of you to always use historical eyes. If you're men of faith, seek true faith. And if you are not men of religious faith, cultivate your faith in humanity, hoping that we may never make such a mistake again. I like thinking, pondering, trying to understand things, including our species, the way we think, trying to learn from our mistakes, including my mistakes that I make every day. And yet, I personally believe that these names that we give are the origin of the problem. Witches, or for example, even historians sometimes, I hear people saying that it was terrible how, for example, this Inquisition was killing the Christians and the Jewish and the Muslims and the non-believers. And non-believer is actually one of the words that I don't particularly like as a linguist, because I'm more of a linguist than a historian, as you know. Because I think that the word unbeliever, the way it's religiously used, it's not particularly definite as a meaning, and I prefer specific words. Because, for example, for a Christian, a non-Christian is an unbeliever, and for a person who's in another religion, a Christian will be an unbeliever. So I personally think that if you believe in God, then you're a believer in God. And if you believe in science, then you're a believer in science. And if you believe in mankind, you will be a believer in mankind. I prefer this way of using this word. So the problem is not that the Christians were killed, that the Jews were killed, that the Muslims were killed, that the atheists were killed. The problem is that human beings were killed. Before putting all these names, let us all remember that we are all one kind. We all have the same rights to life and to joy. I wish to thank you for your time. I wish to thank you for supporting my channel. I love history. There are good things in history and bad things in history. And I want to put both in my channel because I want my channel to be an exemplification of life, which is indeed with its days and its nights. Thank you very much for watching, and remember, the Metatron has spread its wings.